Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Cureton. I am senior journalist for XR Today, and we are bringing you today the latest and greatest in the VR, MR, AR, and XR industries. Today, we have on a very, very special guest today, David Smith, David A. Smith, CTO of Croquet Corporation. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
All right. Yeah, we have a lot to chat about today, and we're going to talk about Croquet OS, which is a
Right.
new solution that's being developed for building the metaverse. But before we get into that, I'd like to ask you, just could you give us some information about your background and your history in the tech industry, because it seems to be quite illustrious, and I want to, have our audiences learn a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I've been doing what we call the metaverse for something like 35 years. I built my first head mount display uh, around 1985 and was actually using it for uh, telepresence, where we had a robotic arm. We used a data glove, if you remember those. We could control the arm and manipulate things, pick things up with this pneumoelastic hand. And we had a head mount. You could actually do eye-hand coordination, and it was pretty neat. But the probably more important was I wrote the first real-time 3D adventure shooter around 1987 called The Colony. In fact, there's a first-person shooter documentary coming out this year, and I'm featured in that, which is pretty exciting to me and more exciting to my wife and kids, I think. But we did that, and then I got a chance to work with Jim Cameron. He got a pirated version of the game, and he was working on the movie The Abyss at the time, and he wanted to be able to visualize the set before it got built. So they came to me. I used the game technology to give him a way of walking around inside the set in real time. And they figured out whole sections of the set didn't need to be built. That saved them a couple $1 million. I'm still waiting to get paid, by the way. And then after that, Tom Clancy, the author, got in touch with me. He became a real fan of the game, and he said, "Hey, let's do something together." And so we formed a game company called Red Storm Entertainment. He introduced me to the FBI hostage rescue team. They took me on one of their training missions, actually a number of them, and it blew me away. I mean, basically, these helicopters flying over this cinder block town, these black clad ninjas come down with ropes, and then they start blowing stuff up. And it was amazing. It was bigger than any movie I'd ever seen. I said, "Tom, we got to do a game off of these guys." And he said, "If you do a game, I'll do a book." And so that's where Rainbow Six came from. So created Rainbow Six and Red Storm Entertainment, of course. That probably more interesting even that was Alan Kay, who some of you may know of. Alan is known as the father of the personal computer, or he invented object-oriented programming. But he and I started collaborating on what's next in computing. And there were two big concepts that we knew were going to be part of that. One is what we all see today, which is interactive 3D. It was pretty clear that the next interface is beyond the windowing system we take for granted, which, by the way, he and his team were created at Xerox PARC. But the new way of working was going to be interactive 3D and fully collaborative all the way down. So we started the original Croquet project together. We brought in David Reed. David was the architect of UDP, which you probably, if you play games, you certainly know of that. He was co-architect of TCP/IP. His thesis at MIT was this idea of replicated computation. How do you get two computers to act in exactly the same way? And so we decided that's the right way to do collaboration in a 3D environment. So we built the very first version of that system back then, working with HP Labs. Alan was a senior fellow at HP Labs at the time. And then, so we got that working. That was in Smalltalk, so not a big developer community, but it was important to be able to demonstrate it actually works. Then later on, I wound up at Lockheed Martin for 5 years, where I was a senior fellow. I led their AR, VR efforts on the training side, and we built a version of the system for the Defense Department on the web browser. And that was a win, but it was still kind of premature early. WebGL had just come out, but after I left Lockheed, Alan said, "We've got to do the real thing." And I said, well, it needs to be an operating system. And he says, well, it takes 5 years to build an operating system. That was 5 years ago. So the Croquet OS was built on those ideas. I happened to get lucky. I inherited his team. They were all part of Y Combinator Research. They were a peer group to OpenAI. And when OpenAI left, that team joined me to start Croquet.
Nice. And any fan of first-person shooters? I know I've been playing those since maybe back in '95, so I'm showing my age a bit.
Yeah.
Back in the days of Doom and its software, and then, of course, you had Halo coming after that. That became another big one.
Yeah, I love that. Halo's beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. Have you seen Halo Infinite, by the way?
Not yet. I'm afraid of it because what happens is you get engrossed, and I'm too busy right now. I'm hoping I have a little bit of free time after Augmented World Expo.
Okay. Well, yeah, you'll be blown away by it. It's amazing. I'm sure. Yeah, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Croquet OS. So this is an amazing new solution that your company has created. And I wanted to ask you, how does it plan to completely change how developers and content creators build the metaverse?
Well, I think we have to. I'll tell you my view of what the metaverse is, and that establishes the context of why we're doing it the way we do it. So the metaverse, in our mind, is primarily a communication technology. You and I are going to be engaging in these virtual worlds, but it's not just to, play a game. It's actually even to create the game. Everything has to be collaborative all the way from the bottom to the top. And so being able to create an object, even program that object collaboratively is an essential aspect of what a real OS would be. So the reason we designed this system the way we did, which is the collaboration layer is at the bottom, not something you layer on top, which really never works, never scales, was this idea of being able to engage directly with somebody else to solve complex issues, to create new things together. And so once you understand it as a communication platform, it also informs why would you be on the browser. The browser's wonderful in a number of ways. First of all, the browser is so powerful today. We have WebGL, we have WebGPU coming. It's on every single device on the planet. Basically, it runs on your phone, runs on your tablet, it runs in your head mount. And so it was pretty clear that if you want to have a communication technology, just like you can call anyone with your phone and they immediately connect to it and start talking to you, the same thing has to happen in the metaverse, where I'm going to be wearing, say, an Apple device, you're going to be wearing a Meta device. We need to be able to communicate and collaborate. How do we do that? Just like every phone in the world can call any other phone, the same thing has to be true of the metaverse. I need to be able to connect with you, and we need to be able to explore and communicate. But as soon as you understand it as communication technology, it really informs the nature of how you create the systems. And that's why an operating system was clearly the right way to go, because you're able to easily create. I mean, it also solves a very hard problem, which is most people don't know how to do multi-user systems. It's really, really tricky. You have everything from race conditions, or you have to do bespoke systems for each little object, which has to handle how we do. It just doesn't scale, and the performance isn't there. And honestly, anybody trying to do multi-user today, most people are amateurs and shouldn't be doing that. What they should do is use a framework like this that solves all those problems and lets them focus on what is it you're trying to build, what matters to the user, what is the interaction the user is going to have. Focus on the value of the system, and if you can make sure that all that infrastructure is already there, then your challenge is dramatically simpler, and the quality of what you create is going to be dramatically better.
Right. And there's a lot of technologies that I know that have been added to the operating system. There's quite a bit of interesting infrastructure that's been placed around the world. Mm-hmm. And we've had the chance to actually demo that, I think it was last week. And I was quite blown away by it. It was amazing the way that everything was able to come together across all platforms. And I think that interoperability is what's sorely needed when building the metaverse. So for you, I wanted to say, could you tell us a little bit about some of the technologies that you have used with Croquet OS, and what are their purposes, and how they'll allow different platforms to be truly interoperable?
Yeah, there's a couple things. There's a lot of things, actually. Obviously, the first thing is just the system's built on JavaScript, although we actually enable even synchronization using WebAssembly. So, for example, our physics engine is Rapier, which, by the way, is an amazingly good open source physics engine. But that's written in Rust, and so it's running in WebAssembly, but it's running near native performance, which is pretty awesome, particularly since you're able to interact with it dynamically. So you can like kick a ball, for example, everybody sees that, or better yet, kick 1,000 balls. They all work, and anything you do is perfectly shared and perfectly replicated. So that's one example. The other is obviously we're using WebGL, but we're really using 3JS. 3JS, when I first saw 3JS, I said to myself, if I were to build a system, a rendering engine, it would look like this. I mean, they did everything right. It's really clean, really beautiful. So the 3JS infrastructure, is really a beautiful platform. And what's important about it is it's not limiting. It doesn't say, hey, you're going to be building it for this. Some of the other engines are great for, hey, you're going to do a game, this is it. What we have is a general purpose system that can be used for games for sure, but also enterprise applications and other things. So that was a really key decision of how we would do this. The other thing was, one of the things that we can demonstrate and do is accessing external live data streams and feed them into the world dynamically. So what that means is, you have a RESTful interface, and you're actually the examples I showed you were live Bitcoin visualization, which is pretty easy. But the other one was every single commercial flight on the planet being mapped onto the globe. You can actually watch the airplanes move around. And that's kind of mind-blowing. It's updating every 15 seconds or so, but you're literally looking at the live world. And so you spin this globe and looking at Europe, and obviously to the east of Europe and to the west of Moscow is a big open area. And of course, that's Ukraine. There's no commercial flights over that. And to see that live is so visceral. It's like, okay, the real world is being displayed to me in a way that you normally would never be able to see. And it's right there, right now. What's really cool is that's an object inside the Croquet system. So you'll be able to take that object and save it out, and then, or copy it, and then you can be able to paste it into another world. And now you've got that same globe running with all the airplanes flying all over the place. It's really, so what you start seeing is these technologies that we take for granted in the web are actually also the crucial parts of building the next generation OS. We are open. We use every open standard you can imagine in building our system. So if you're already a web developer, and by the way, there's 16.5 million JavaScript developers out there, which is more than all the other languages put together, then you already know how to do this. You already know how to build these applications. And we focus on, we solved all the hard parts. There's always hard parts in programming, but we solved this selection of hard parts so that you can focus on these other things. What makes your application, your capability special? The other thing that's really important is this is deployed as a library on our side. So when you build these apps, these worlds really, that they are going to be your URL. It's just basically like you build a React application. Where's that go? It's going to be your website. It has to be. And it's got to be your content. You have to own it. It can't be locked up in somebody else's system. It literally has to be controlled by you, as it should be. However, all these worlds need to be linked. So that means that I'm looking at this world, but I want to connect to yours. So one of the things I didn't mention is I invented portals like 1,000 years ago, but it was so clear that we need to have portals in this next generation metaverse. And how do we do that? What I came up with is what we call cell-based portals. So you're looking at this world on your screen and your head mount, whatever, and the way to think about it, there's a portal in there that's linked to another world that has to be secure. In other words, if I load that second world through there, I can't mix the code because there might be malware in one of the worlds I'm connecting to, and that will basically infect everything. So it has to be properly sandboxed. Well, how do you do that? So this world rendered on front is in an iframe, and then we cut a hole because iframes can be transparent. And underneath, you put another iframe, which is the world you're connecting to, so you can see through one to the other. And then when you move around, we just send a message between the iframes saying, hey, this is the new transform. But you're not sending code, you're not sending anything like that. So it's a perfectly secure way of having one world linked to another. Again, that's sort of the basis of why the internet took off, was this ability to connect one space to another, one page to another. And remember, we used to surf the internet. We're about to meta surf the metaverse, where you can go from world to world to world to world, and it's going to be marvelous.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like too, because I know that, when we always spoke about the metaverse, we would think about the different types of platforms that were being invented. For example, Meta's Horizon worlds. You had NVIDIA's Omniverse and lots of other different ones. So, you would have to go through the company, make sure that that company can supply you with the kit and the interface needed for it. And now with Croquet OS, there's no longer the need for that. I mean, they have a truly interoperable platform through the Microverse IDE. And so for me, I think that is one of the best ways for us to build that interoperability, because I know that a lot of people have been advocating for that. If I'm not mistaken, it was members of Ready Player Me were very much about the open source metaverse.
Right.
Now, for you, I was going to ask, so Croquet is allowing people to move development of the metaverse under the right framework, and we're going into the interoperability, right? What do you think that firms will need to do in order to build those global standards in the metaverse while avoiding these types of closed proprietary systems?
There's a number of things that we have to work on. By the way, I might mention that Tony Parisi just joined us as on our advisory board. And the reason I bring him up is he was responsible for two crucial standards in the development of the metaverse. One was VRML. And VRML was basically a way to, another web standard allowed you to share 3D worlds. In fact, my product, I wrote a product called Virtus Walkthrough many years ago that was the very first supporter and exporter of VRML worlds. So the other thing he did was GLTF, which is obviously a standard 3D format. So one of the things he and I have been talking about is what's the next piece, which is the metadata of that. So for example, in Croquet, you have this, I talked about this globe, and you save that out. You're actually saving that out as a JSON file that's fully editable. And then you can share that with other people, like just dragging and dropping. But what we want to do is formulate that as a standard, so that an open standard, so anybody can take that. And that means, obviously, if it's an open standard, you're going to take our version of it as a starting point. But what we want to do is make it a lot more robust, a lot more extensible by third parties. It works for us right now, but it really needs to be kind of taken over by the community. And that's a first example. The second one is the portal thing I just described, this cell-based portals. That should be also available as a standard. So whether you use Croquet or not, you should still have the ability to provide portals from one world to another. So when I'm in this XYZ's framework, but there's a portal to a Croquet world, that's great, or a portal to another world, doesn't matter. But being able to provide a standard way of securely connecting worlds is essential. So we're going to be making that portal infrastructure standardized and available to anyone as well. So our business, when you come right down to it, our business is a fleet of reflectors that are worldwide. The way the system works is you interact with an object in Croquet, a message gets sent to the reflector and bounced off to all the participants. So that obviously we're going to keep doing that. We think that's the best way to do it, but other people have other ways to do it. But it should still interoperate with the same portal infrastructure that we would use. And so so there's a number of very cool and very important capabilities that I think are going to be essential for the open metaverse to evolve in the right way. And we've been big fans of open source forever. The very first version of Croquet was open source. The second version was open sourced. And and in fact, all the small talk stuff that we did, we worked very hard on the Squeak platform, which, by the way, that work led to the Scratch programming system for kids. So we're very, very deeply aware of the community that we're trying to foster here. So our job is as much helping to nurture this community as it is to get the metaverse to be a solid platform for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I had this image in my head when you were speaking about the different portals and stuff, how cells actually, there are just billions, trillions of cells within the human body working together. And, having this kind of system of filtering in order to allow nutrients or different energies to pass through, in a safe and reliable manner. So I think it almost paints a picture to me of the metaverse being an organic concept. So I don't know, it popped into my head.
Remember, that's exactly right, because it's the web.
Right.
It's the web. We're connecting. All these pages are all connected. This, in a real sense, a Croquet metaverse, a microverse, is just another web page. It just happens to have all these other capabilities. But the connection model you just described is like where you just described this incredible thing that we take for granted that's in our pocket everywhere we go, which is the internet. And so all that's happening here is we're putting another new front end onto the internet. So we inherit all that magic that's there. By the way, the largest open source project in the history of mankind was the browser, right? You could look at the sources of any page. You still can, by the way. You look up there, they may obfuscate it, but that's the magic of where we're going. The web is. When you described it, it's like, yeah, that's the web, of course, and that's the necessary thing. That's the right place for all this wonderful stuff to live. You can't have it in a walled garden and say, this is mine, and you can come in, but you can't go out. That's not going to work. That won't scale. The internet scaled the way it did because it was open, because it was that accessible, because there were no boundaries. There's no friction on the development side. There's no friction to go from one page to another. It's all about this open, friction-free engagement. And that's what the metaverse, whether anybody likes it or not, that's what the metaverse is going to be. It's inevitable. And so the web is, to me, I said it's a communication platform, a friction-free way to talk. It's what the phone is going to be. When you think about the fact your phone can call any phone on the planet. Just dial a random number, you'll talk to somebody, and that's the way it has to be. Well, what's the plain old telephone service for the metaverse? It's the web. Every device. Every head mount is going to support a web browser. And so you'll be able to have this augmented conversation where I'm talking to you, you're wearing a different device than I am, and it's just going to work. And it's just like, when you understand it, that perspective, it's like, yeah, of course that's going to happen. That's the way it has to happen.
Absolutely. So, there's so much to unpack and so much to think about, in the development of this. And so I wanted to ask you, did you have anything else that you wanted to add or to speak about, regarding Croquet OS?
Yeah, we are just entering alpha this week, in fact. And, one of the things we want to invite people to try this out. It's available. It's just go to our webpage, sign up, and we'll get you signed up as an alpha developer to start playing with these ideas, connecting things and sharing. We're really interested in hearing people's perspectives on where the future needs to go to. I mean, this is, as I said, our number one job is to help foster this community. We've got a huge amount of experience building these worlds, but the reality of it is the definition of what the metaverse is really going to be is probably in some 12-year-old's head right now. And that's the person, she is going to be the one that says, this is why you did all this stuff. And that's going to be the real transformation. All we're doing is giving her the tools she needs to be able to change the world.
Absolutely. Great words. And thanks so much for sharing your insights. And so, yeah, thanks. I'm piecing everything together in my head right now, because there's a lot to look forward to in the future with this, with this solution as well. So thanks so much for your time,
it's fun
David.
as hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, once again, this was David A. Smith, the CTO of Croquet Corporation, and I am Damon Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. If you like these conversations, please join us on social media at the XR News hashtag. You can join us at Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Once again, we're signing off. Thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great weekend.